our guest today, Adam McVeigh, leader of Edinburgh Council and I think deputy chair of the Edinburgh Climate Commission, Andrea Nicholas, chief executive of Green Tourism, Kevin Freyer from Climate Emergency UK, Katie Maguire and Mike Leonard from Leeds University, and Brad Collier from QCI in the States. So we're going to try and cover a range of kind of subjects from the whole sort of strategy for local government down into some of the specifics. But I'm going to start off with a question to Kevin, if I may, just to give us a feel for how, from your experience, well, maybe you say a little bit about, Climate Emergency UK, but your experience, how authorities are getting in their response to the climate emergency.
Yes, thank you, Andrew, and thanks very much indeed for inviting me. So I'm also Cabinet Member for Climate Action at Lancaster City Council, and as soon as Council started declaring a climate emergency, and Bristol was the first, of course, I recognised that there was a need for sharing, because lots of councils wouldn't do this. So I set up a website and organisation, Climate Emergency UK, where we documented all of the declarations, tried to come up with some kind of template, never quite managed it. And now that councils are moving on to action plans, because over 75% of councils have declared a climate emergency. And what's also emerging is that even ones that haven't are still carrying on as though they have, and producing really quite good action plans. So we are also, and I'll just put a couple of links in the chat, where we've now moved on from declarations to documenting the action plans. So we have a database that we've developed with My Society of all of the action plans we can find, and please do tell us about yours so we can add them to the database. And we've also just published the first draft of a checklist that we've put together with Ashton and Centre for Alternative Technology and Friends of the Earth, of what a good action plan consists of, and with headlines like, making sure you engage the community and things like that, and a whole list of links to good practice. So what we're hoping to achieve with that really is shared good practice, and really trying to share the ambition. And one of the pleasing things, having done a study of our database recently, was discovering that there's 117 councils, and I'm sure there's one or two here, who have set 2030 not only as their own a target for their own emissions, and the majority have done that, but also for the whole district. And recognising, of course, that resources are limited, that legislation is limited, and everything is like that, but saying, look, this is a really serious challenge. We're up for it. We want to do absolutely everything we can, both within our powers, and hopefully, there was a lot of commitment to lobbying the government as well to give us the tools that we needed. So that's the background to the sort of thing that we've been doing. Excellent.
And how important, are there sort of themes in that? How important are the targets you think that have been set there, not just for the council but for the area?
I think it really is important that that there is a target. If a council, and if a council set a target the same as the government's target, what it means is we are going to sit back and not have to do anything, because the government are going to lead on this. So it shows leadership, it shows commitment, it shows it matters, it gives a signal to everybody, and the government is certainly noticing. It gives a signal to everybody that these are our ambitions, and we're going to. And there's a gap at the moment, obviously, between the targets and what's actually happening for all sorts of reasons. COVID's obviously got in the way, and so on. But the importance of a target, I think, is that local authorities are starting to gear up to it. They're making appointments, they're employing staff, they're recognizing that they can't be achieved without the full engagement with communities. So I think we're seeing community engagement on a scale that has possibly not not been for a long time, of that recognition that you know, everything from citizens' assemblies to climate commissions and all sorts, because there's talent out there, there's commitment out there, there's people who've got the time out there, and you know, if you put out the call, if you like, we've had hundreds of people turning up to meetings saying, we want to get involved. What can we do to support this? So I think that you know, that's one of the key messages. If that the message is clear to people, you're serious and you've got a target and you want to do everything you can to meet that target, people are showing up.
It's interesting. So there's one of the things I think around the recent pandemic has shown is that response at the local level kind of really works, and response at a national level can you know, be a bit of a blunt instrument at times. So there's definitely some synergies there. Adam, coming to you, you've obviously in your area done a number of things, and you've got a climate commission. What have been the critical success factors of the Edinburgh approach?
I think, I mean, one is leadership. Just as Kevin said, setting a 2030 net zero target was one of the kind of early things we did. I actually think we set our 2030 target before we formally declared a climate emergency, although we have done since as well. But there was certainly no ambiguity about why we were doing that. We linked that very closely to our poverty reduction plan as well. So we have the same target 2030 for our poverty reduction actions as we have for our climate obligation actions, and we're very much trying to push those two agendas together because they fit incredibly well together. When you're talking about transport poverty and transport carbon reduction, when you're talking about heat poverty and energy poverty and decarbonisation, they both work together, and particularly in Edinburgh in an urban setting where if we crack transport and energy, not only have we made inroads in our poverty agenda, we'll have pretty much brought our city to a net zero position if we get those two areas right. The success of that is absolutely going to be down to collaboration, and it's collaboration with key partners in the city, as well as the Climate Commission, where we have a very strong number of commissioners sitting around. We also have a climate compact, which we've signed up to as a council, and other major organisations in the city. Our festivals, for example, have signed up to that. Some other key industry players have signed up to that to really drive that forward. Huge amount of community engagement is going to happen and is happening right now, but I did want to add perhaps a little bit of difficulty in that if you're in an urban environment, you're not talking about particularly easy actions for a lot of this stuff. If you're not in an urban environment, then EV charging points will probably be your way forward in terms of decarbonising transport. In an urban environment like Edinburgh, that isn't an option. So we have to think very differently about how we change the landscape, and that means moving transport modes quite substantially over the next 10 years and a major shift. Now, we're all kidding ourselves if we think that's universally popular. Yep. So as well as that engagement piece, which is absolutely crucial to that success, what we need is the legislative levers and powers to back that up. And that means, to put it absolutely bluntly, that councils are going to have to jump through a lot less hoops, and there's going to have to be a lot less objections or not less objections, but less opportunity for holdout objections to delay projects. I'll give you one tangible example in Edinburgh. Our east-west cycleway, one of the crucial links to build active travel infrastructure from the west of the city into the centre and connecting to others, has been delayed by years by very few objectors using the transport regulation order process, traffic regulation order process, to its absolute full advantage. Now, that isn't democratic, that isn't proper, that isn't effective in terms of how we can get action, and there's going to have to be a change in that legislation and other legislations to really empower local government to embrace this agenda and lead with it. Of course, there's a role for engagement, for comment, for things to be revised, for people's views to be taken on board and driven forward. But if we, dare I use the word pander, to those that will shout the loudest, we are never going to hit our 2030 target, and the country will miss its far less ambitious targets than that. I did want to also say, one of the really interesting things in Edinburgh is you have centres of innovation right here within the university, within the Centre for Carbon Innovation, are absolutely linked into the work we are doing. So we are capitalising not just on the work that's been done across the UK and across Europe and across the world in embracing new technologies, new approaches, but we're using those big brains within our own city that can help us deliver. And they have a vested interest, not just in getting things built on the ground and solutions made for their own kind of career interest, but actually they'll live here, they'll work here, they have much more of a direct impact. So I think our sustainability plan will be published in the next couple of months. I think that'll be a very strong roadmap to how we go. We've already done a huge amount of analysis on what it will take to get the majority of the way towards our net zero ambitions, and that plan will be the tangible roadmap of how we get there. So there's a huge amount coming together in a city like Edinburgh and all over the world, actually, in terms of this agenda and building that success. And there are a huge amount being done in Edinburgh to drive that success, but there are still work to be done, I think, in empowering local government to be able to really meet that agenda as fully as we need to.
Excellent, thank you. Andrea, you've got some experience around measuring and reporting on sustainable development goals. If you've got those plans and you're trying to move things forward, in your experience, what are the challenges for a council in kind of reporting on their SDGs?
Okay, thanks, Andrew, and good morning, everybody. So for those that maybe aren't aware, the SDGs have actually been around since 2015. 6 years, and there are 17 of them which cover a number of guidelines and standards that governments and countries are aligning themselves to, including things like no poverty, quality education, equality, sustainable cities and communities, climate action, and life below water and above ground. Within the SDGs, there are something like 169 targets that we are all supposed to be trying to work towards to achieve by 2030, which is actually only 9 years ahead. So it's not an awful lot of time. Our experience is in green business, we are a company that works with sustainability standards, and we've been doing that for over 25 years, primarily within hospitality tourism, but also within destinations. And our experience has been that a lot of local authorities, public agencies, destinations are now making a commitment through a climate emergency, net zero plans, and as Kevin said, that they're now developing more of the action plans and trying to put some meat on the bones. But our experience has been it's very mixed across the country. Some are way ahead of others, and when it comes to the SDGs, again, some local authorities or some destinations have really engaged with that. People like Newcastle and City of York and Oxford City, people like that. But a lot of people aren't actually adjusting to them or considering them. And we know that down the line, they're probably going to become a legislative reporting process, the same as climate emissions are. The LGA recently, last year, actually launched a guide for local authorities on how to address SDGs. So that's worth looking at. But I think the challenge for local authorities and destinations is where to start with the SDGs. And I think that's the same experience we've had in the standards and the developments that we've done over the last 25 years. We've produced a framework around people, places and planets, very similar to the SDGs. It's a digital platform called Green Check that allows people to provide information, and it provides a structure, a way of working through, assessing where you are as a baseline, but then looking at what you can achieve and what you want to achieve, targets. And we've developed that for other agencies, NHS Scotland and also Lothian Buses. We're working with them on their own sort of structure and strategy. And as I said, the challenge is where to start. So having that framework, having that checklist, that list of what is appropriate, how that aligns to the different SDGs, and then identifying for the local authorities what are the key areas for your particular local authority. As Adam said, if you're in urban areas, it can be completely different strategy to what you might be doing in a rural area, and the SDGs will apply to you in different ways across different situations. So I think you need to be looking at a framework to start with, and then developing a bespoke plan. And I think the key part of any structure, framework, emergency climates, action plan, or the SDGs is about understanding what you're doing. So it's about data collection. And I think that's a big challenge for many local authorities, many different departments. And this is not something that should just be the ownership of one department in the council. It's not just the carbon department. It is across the whole gambit of the whole local authority or destination. I think everybody needs to take responsibility. Collecting data is absolutely vital, because unless you know what you've already got and what you're already doing, you can't report on that, you can't monitor it, and you can't set in place targets and then be able to prove or demonstrate that you are improving. So I think the important thing is collection of data, and that the easiest way possible, obviously, to try and put it into one central portal where you can all access it. Having the ability to then, from that data, report on it and be transparent and credible. And I think the opportunity, if there was a single portal or an area where people can collect information in a similar way, is that the ability to then network, provide best practice, produce case studies, and share what experiences, like we are doing today, of what works and what doesn't work, the challenges. So that's, I think, where the SDGs sit within the whole kind of other areas you're talking about today.
Thanks. I mean, it's interesting to listen to that. You sort of the large number of organisations trying to report on information in the same way. Clearly, if they're reporting in the same sort of systems, in the same sort of forms, but there's still a level of knowledge you need to have to be able to A, collect, and B, report. How long did it, you've been doing it in tourism for a while. How long did it take to get that going? And was it, how easy a task is it to get people to get that level of consistency that we all going to need in order to A, share best practice, and B, to work out collectively whether we're going to hit those targets that we're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, the base point is always to start with a standard. So whether it's your climate emergency actions that you've identified, or actually the SDGs or our own standard that we're working towards, by having that initial standard, you can then compare what you're currently doing, like a baseline audit. What are we doing against this SDG? What are we doing against this one? What areas are the gaps? Where areas are there particular opportunities for saving money or for implementing things quicker? Identifying where those barriers are, whether it's somebody doesn't like the cycle route or whatever it is. Is there some quick wins that we can do? And once you start the process, it's amazing. We found this, all our experiences, that you're already doing an awful lot, but you might be doing it in lots of different ways with lots of different peoples and lots of different departments, and actually you don't know what that department over there is doing, or what that group of people over there are doing. So actually bringing things together in one place, you'll actually identify an awful lot of stuff that you're already doing, and then everyone goes, oh, we're already doing it, that's amazing. Now what can we do to implement the bigger problems or the bigger issues? How can we put that into a structure? How can we come together at a regular time period to report on that? How can we start building that within other departments that haven't engaged with the process yet? So you start building that kind of momentum, and I think that's, in our experience, that's the best way forward, is bringing things together, setting a baseline, and then building from that and motivating. And it's amazing how quickly things can move once you start that motivation, and people can start to see results, especially if they're visual online and you can access it and look at it and go, oh yes, I can see how we've, the graph's going up. That's great.
Brilliant. We had one question which I'll maybe ask you to address in the chat. So there's probably, you and I used some 3-letter acronyms there. SDGs, I know was one, but there's apparently another one I missed. So maybe if we do a in the chat, we'll maybe put a translation for those that aren't familiar with them.
Glossary.
Peter, if we miss it, then Peter Hayden, if you want to put in there your the TLAs you want explained, that'd be great. I'd like to come now to Katie McGuire and Mike Leonard. Welcome. I'll maybe address you jointly, and you can respond individually from your different perspectives within the Leeds University environment. So, how have you approached sustainability in your wider area, and also how can the education sector help councils prepare, in terms of their responses to the sort of the goals that we've just discussed?
Hello everybody, it's actually just me. Unfortunately, Mike's got some connectivity issues. He's on campus and apparently systems are down, so it's just me. But I'm Deputy Director of Sustainability at the University of Leeds. So I guess I just wanted to pick up, I'll kind of talk more broadly about some of the questions that you had there, but I'll pick up on a couple of things that we've talked about already. I think that it's really interesting to hear what you're doing up in Edinburgh. I think we have some similar things going on in Leeds. What I thought was really interesting and really great that everybody's now working on their action plans, and we're doing the same around climate. A couple of years ago, we set out our 7 principles for addressing the climate crisis. It was quite interesting because at the time we didn't declare a climate emergency, specifically because we felt that at the time it didn't really mean anything. There was nothing behind it. A lot of people were doing it but didn't know what it meant. So instead, we set out 7 principles, which included net zero targets of 2030, but a whole range of other actions as well that kind of integrated sustainability across the institutions. So including things like how we integrate sustainability and climate into our teaching, our education, our outreach. But a couple of our principles actually are strongly linked to local authorities. So we have clear principles and commitments to work in collaboration with Leeds City Council around the climate emergency. So Leeds City Council have declared a climate emergency, but also in how we support them around things like travel infrastructure and how we work closely with them. I also just wanted to point, and I'll come back to what I kind of wanted to take on that as well, but on the SDGs as well, really important what you were saying, Andrew, about having metrics and things that you can measure against. And it's something that we've kind of struggled with at first, but there are actually luckily a range of different metrics in the higher education sector that we can measure against. So first of all, we signed up to the SDG Accord, which is something that educational institutions globally have signed up to commit to embedding the SDGs into everything that we do. But in the last couple of years, the Times Higher Education have released an impact ranking. So Times Higher are the ones that do like the world university rankings. So they now do an impact ranking, which is founded on the SDGs. So it's really interesting and worth having a look at that. It is focused on the education sector, but there's a huge amount of parallels in that. So there's a whole range of questions and criteria within each of the SDGs that kind of give you a guide. It's like, okay, so as an institution, if we were trying to address this particular SDG, what are the kinds of things should we be doing and what should we be looking at? So I'd really encourage you to go and have a little look at that. We submitted for that last year, and it was a massive task to collate that information, as you can imagine, from a research-based institution as well across the whole. To collate that, I was overseeing that, but we actually came 3rd in the UK and 11th globally out of 766, so we're pretty proud of that one. And I've just submitted just before Christmas for the 2021 version, so fingers crossed for April. But I'd recommend having a look at that. I think that might give some guidance. It doesn't matter that it's education focused, it's kind of more institutional, and it covers a whole range of things. So just going back to kind of what I mentioned about, our principles for climate, and I guess what I wanted to really pull out here was the role of educational institutions in the city, in working in partnership and in collaboration with councils and local authorities. I cannot kind of emphasise enough how beneficial that can be. I think there are. As an institution, we have lots of commitments around our civic responsibility and how we want to make a difference, both locally and also globally as well. So we see our role as a role in society to help solve societal challenges. So there's lots of opportunities there, challenges that the council and local authorities might have in the region. You know, there's opportunities for research, for collaboration on projects, and for outreach activity. Of course, we do a huge amount of work around widening participation and educational engagement to encourage you know, those from disadvantaged backgrounds and access into education. So that comes hand in hand with different programs of activity around poverty and various different activity around there. I think kind of expanding that a bit further in terms of the role of partnerships and collaboration, it's something that a lot of universities have developed, is a living lab approach, and it's something that we have at the university, and it's been really successful. So living lab concept is about how we use initially our campus as a test bed for solving solutions. So if there's an operational challenge, it's how do we bring our academic community and our operational community and students together to solve that challenge and create an opportunity for learning and for research and solve that challenge. So we've got a number of really great projects that we work on, but we've also expanded that out into the city. So we have an air quality living lab in Leeds. There's some real challenges around air quality in Leeds. So we work in partnership with the local authority and also other partners in the city and anchor institutions around monitoring air quality and what that looks like. So we're really working together in partnership to help solve those issues. We have projects around plastics, projects around flood alleviation. So again, for us, it's about impacts, and that's a big part of the SDGs as well. It's about creating impact. So there's such an opportunity, and I really would encourage local authorities to reach out to their education institutions. And I think that can cover in many different ways, because all institutions are different. We're a Russell Group, we're a huge research-based institution, but other more vocational-based institutions, again, how are we going to solve the challenges of climate change? How are we going to educate, you know, thinking about the future workforce that we're going to need to support the changes and the transition to net zero, for example. So, you know, we should be looking at the courses around, you know, buildings and engineering. How are we going to support the engineers of the future to actually be able to deliver on the net zero commitments? So there's a real link there as well. So it's really important to have those links. What else have I got? I have a load of other things. I guess. We can come back. Sorry.
We can come back if you've got. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was going to say the other thing as well is to remember that one thing that we do as well is that we're really keen on working with the third sector as well, and the role of the third sector can play in supporting in solving challenges as well. So we have something called positive impact partners, which is where we match up staff with the third sector to essentially kind of volunteer their time to support them, but also create beneficial research projects and collaboration projects as well. So really important to remember the role of the third sector, who no doubt are absolutely suffering right now due to everything that's gone on with COVID as well. Great, hopefully that answered your question.
It's raised a load of others I've been noting down as I've gone, but I'll come back to you. Brad, if I can turn to you, we've heard from Adam that, you know, one of the challenges is to get the knowledge on new technical developments, and Katie mentioned, you know, plastics as being a specific area, one of the areas that you're kind of linked to. Can you give us a bit of a flavour about, obviously you've got a particular technology, but what you're doing, both, and what sort of impact that can have, you know, globally?
Well, I think that's a very good starting point, actually, because I've been looking at you know, technologies for a 20-year period now, and that can have a positive impact on the climate crisis. And one of the big challenges is not only identifying the correct technologies, but also looking at those technologies that can have an impact at scale. So I think the word that you've chosen there, global, is, you know, a good starting point. And I'm a champion of a company based just outside of Chicago called QCI, and they've really only become prominent since President Obama, I guess it was eight years ago now, in one meeting joined together the Department of Energy and the Department of Climate Change in one single conference. And, this brought this company to prominence, really. But what they're about is actually eliminating pollution, starting at the most granular and personal level, which is how we treat our garbage, or, in American parlance, their trash. So the technology itself is all about recycling to a very high degree of efficiency. But going to your introduction, key to the technology really is a proprietary transmolecular process that returns plastic to its original molecular state, which is oil. And in the process of doing that, we're able to create quite valuable byproducts, gases, oils, and so on, from that molecular process, which can be sold, which commercializes the technology in quite a unique way. So really, for the first time, and I hate this expression which my colleagues in the States use, but I'll use it anyway because it's good shorthand, you can actually take trash and convert it to cash. And I think that's the key point, because at the end of the day, we all know on this call that economics are going to be one of the most important drivers in responding to the climate crisis. So I'll give you a quick example there. In the plant in Ann Arbor, just outside of Chicago, the original investment in the plant was just over $60 million. The plant itself takes unseparated garbage, so effectively the black bags that, before separation came into our consciousness, we used to throw all of our garbage in a black plastic bag and put it outside for the bin man to come and collect. Well, in the States, QCI now take that unseparated black plastic bag, process it in a plant that has cost $50 million to build and commission, and it actually returns, purely on the plastic alone, about $50 million a year in perpetuity. So for the first time, there's almost a new sector being created, which I allude to as remining. So it takes those molecules, which can be used again and again and again, and it simply remines them. So if you look at what the large oil and gas companies have done, and the huge amounts of money that they've spent at the front end of mining those molecules, this technology effectively remines it and creates a micro oil well in every facility where it's set up. So yeah, I hope that's a reasonable introduction, Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of where we used to work with Hampshire County Council, and they had essentially they built industry, small businesses around their waste processing plants. So effectively what you're saying is you can create new and higher grade raw materials which actually can be used to generate economic activity locally.
Yeah, exactly. And again, that's a very good point, because the whole system itself can be super automated, or if it was, for example, in a country where you were more concerned or equally concerned about job creation, it could be, quite a manual process. But the waste is taken, it's diverted into 27 different waste streams, and every part of not only plastic but glass, metal, organic material, everything that you can conceive of as being in your black plastic bag is recycled to very high efficiency.
I mean, one of our terrible legacies is a place. You know, the UK has been a net exporter of plastic to places around the world that it hasn't properly validated that they are actually able to process them. You know, in theory, we've quote unquote recycled it, but actually what we've done is we've dumped it on other countries. Are you doing anything to kind of help clean up that mess? Because it sounds like you've got a solution that might.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it's where we've all got this deep shame as a nation, I think, that we've shipped so much of our waste, you know, around the world. And it really is the equivalent, once you know about it, of taking your rubbish and throwing it over your neighbour's garden, really. And there's a better way of doing it, and we all know, rather than just putting it in landfill as well. So there are some quite big conversations going on in Malaysia and you know, the ASEAN area at the moment, where it would be you know, just marvellous really to stop this shipping of the waste that we have, not only in the UK but from, you know, Europe in general, and taking it to Malaysia and other destinations. So yeah, there are some very big conversations going on there at government level at the moment.
Great, thank you. So we start to come back and draw some of the themes out. I think we've seen some interesting themes around partnership. We've seen some interesting themes around community engagement and sharing best practice as some key themes coming out there. Maybe I could return to yourself, Adam, initially, and just say, in terms of your engagement, how hard, not just externally with community groups, but inside the authority, has that been? Obviously, you've shown some strong leadership. The council now is showing strong leadership, but I'm sure it wasn't, you know, straightforward to start with. What were the hard to reach groups? What were the sort of what challenges did you face in getting people on board, or do you still face in getting people on board in moving things forward?
I think you find absolutely everywhere, because whether you're talking about a council department or a business or you know, street of residents that you're asking to do something slightly different, you know, what you're asking people to do is change. You're asking a council officer to change how they work, and what they're seeing when you're coming to them with that approach is what they're saying is more. You know, they're seeing more being put on their desk that they can't possibly work out how they're going to balance that with everything else that they still need to do. So there are barriers everywhere, and it really needs a kind of top to tail approach right through the organisation. It can't be kind of senior management and politicians in a little ivory tower shouting about climate change. It has to be across everything. Officers that are on the ground need to be thinking about this agenda. The transport officials, who are the guys who are going to be doing the resurfacing programme, are going to have to think about this agenda so that they can flag projects that just meet that cusp of meriting a cycleway being put in that road resurfacing project as opposed to something else. So it can't be centrally planned with a few well-meaning or ambitious or strong leadership individuals. It has to cut through absolutely everything, and that will take time. I'm not going to sit and pretend that Edinburgh Council or Edinburgh as a city are absolutely 100% going like a train on that agenda, and there's nothing going to stop us hitting that 2030 target. You know, we're asking a seismic change in some cases of people, quite a dramatic change in how they go about their business, how they plan, the time periods that they plan for. You know, I'll use one very pertinent example in policy terms. A spend to save policy within the council has a payback period of something like 3 years. Now, if we're going to build that meaningfully into addressing climate change, that's going to have to be longer, because it's going to have to accept that carbon reduction measures will have a payback. They will pay for themselves, but not over 3 years, not over 5 years, probably 8 years, maybe 12 years at a push. So we have to get the policies right and the framework right to enable people to change. But culturally, you know, there's such a big oil tanker type shift, to use an obsolete reference for the discussion that we're talking about. You know, there's going to have to be that very gradual kind of shift over from everyone at every level. Otherwise, we just won't hit that target. We will have nice policies to look at and read, and not delivery on the ground.
That's great. Thanks, Kevin, also for putting into the chat a link to the Britain Talks Climate toolkit, which hopefully can also help. Katie, you obviously work both locally and within the university. Have you had hard to reach groups? Have students got on board with your labs? You know, or have the particular groups that you've had a challenge with? What's the situation been for you?
I think it's really interesting, actually. It's such an interesting time. The last couple of years have been really pivotal in the sustainability movement across the whole globe, really. And there's some huge social movements that have happened. Black Lives Matter, the climate crisis, you know, all these big things that are going on. We're actually finding that students are leading the way and pushing us, which is absolutely amazing, and it's what we want. So it's a different time. It's something that I guess I wasn't familiar with it as a student when I was a student, that we were quite an apathetic time. But yeah, so it's really great. But I guess just to echo what Adam was saying, that in order to make this really truly work within an organisation or within an institution, it has to be embedded at every level. And it's something that we strive for. We have achieved in many ways at the university, but continually it's a daily challenge and battle, and probably the majority of my role is embedding and engagement and talking to others and trying to support them to do that. And I think it's really important that that things like policies and processes are created, because that's how you do create systematic change. But what needs to go alongside that is cultural change and behaviour change as well, and that needs to be you know, something that is addressed across the whole organisation. And one thing that we're quite focused on is that although I run a team, you know, we have our sustainability service that supports sustainability and delivering that at the university. We are not those that do sustainability. You know, as far as we're concerned, everybody supports sustainability in the agendas, and our role is to facilitate and enable, and that's been really important. And one of the ways that we do that is actually we create bespoke action plans within the institution. So each school and service has something called a blueprint, which is something that we support them to develop, which is a sustainability action plan. And that's a way that we support those areas to create something that's meaningful for them, that addresses their material impacts that are relevant for their areas, but also something that they can influence as well. So rather than it being a strict criteria that everybody has to follow, it's something that that is bespoke and created for each one, but still under the framework of the university strategy. And actually, I noticed Mike's joined as well, and Mike's heads up our sustainability in residences and has a blueprint. So I didn't know whether you wanted to bring you in here, Mike, now that you've been able to join, if you wanted to say anything a little bit more specific about that.
Yeah, we're in year 3 now of the blueprint, so we've worked with colleagues from sustainability in actually identifying the main impacts where we want to make changes, and that is tailored to us as a residential, so our blueprint is different to other people's, but we're actually progressing through quite well. We're achieving a lot of the actions required of us, and it's trying to keep people on board with the staff and students. Obviously our students in residence is only with us for about 1 year, and that actually in reality is only 2 10-week terms. So obviously there's a bit of a challenge there in keeping that momentum going. But yeah, we're working with Katie and the team quite successfully.
Great, thank you. So there's been a lot of knowledge that you've each individually shared, and Adam, you talked about, you know, specifics around technical decisions around transport and what the right decision might be to make things more sustainable for communities. So I guess the question then comes about, you know, where are the best places? We've had one listed by yourself, Kevin, around the checklist. there's with that huge range of topics ranging from the sort of super engineering technical through to community engagement and sustainable communities, where are the sort of places that new councils new to this agenda can come to? If I can sort of ask you, Kevin, first, you've been gathering some information on what councils are doing. How easy is it to find your way around the information that you're going to need?
If we start with the councils themselves, you can go to, if you're looking for what the council are doing about climate change, it's a small minority that you can actually find that information easily. It's not linked to from the front page. It might not even be a page on the website. The action plan might be buried deep as an appendix in minutes. So there's a huge job for councils to do. I'd love to see every council by the end of the year have a page. Every council has a COVID page linked from their front page. Let's have the same thing with climate, and then we can begin to find out more easily. There's got to be better collections of information. The LGA, Local Government Association, have started to do this. They are totally under-resourced to deal with climate change. There is a huge problem here with the resourcing. Everything we do is completely unfunded. We are hoping that BEIS did promise us some money for the database, because they recognised how important it was. But then, of course, they've been sidetracked by Green Homes grants and so many things. So, and even just that, editing the checklist this week, things have changed about future home standards. Things have changed about Green Homes grants. It's a constant run just to keep up with latest information. So, managing the best practice, where's the best practice, what's the latest legislation you've got to keep up with, and so on. It's a huge job, and it's not being funded by the LGA, the government. It's not being funded by anybody at the moment. So it's down to us at the grassroots to do that. And I don't actually care who does it, as long as somebody does. Yeah. So, and there's not really a repository for it yet. If there is, then, and I don't know about it, please tell me. But otherwise, do talk to me about the best way we can do this. Thank you.
Thanks. I mean, obviously, for those of you that aren't, but your geography is LGA is the Local Government Association for England. Adam, is COSLA doing something similar? If councils want to see what's happening with Scottish councils, is COSLA helping gather and support and recirculate information for climate change issues? Is that something you've found?
I'll be honest, I've not found it as a frontier for us in how to develop it. Actually, where we are having more collaboration is at the city level.
Right.
The Cities Alliance in Scotland, of the 7 cities, there's been far more collaboration around some of those big problems, and far more synergy actually in terms of how they're taken forward. There are macro things that are discussed on a national level in COSLA and relevant to all 32 local authorities, tied around some of the national programmes, for example, and funding and regulation in relation to those national programmes. But in terms of that kind of collaborative piece, it's been far more kind of led by the cities, where there's far more synergy. I should say regionally, we're seeing a lot more collaboration as well in this space. So because virtually every city in Scotland now has a city deal in some form of the process, it's provided a real kind of table for people to sit around and discuss these issues. And from those discussions have come other strands which have helped enable kind of regional transport and regional actions to try and help in this space. So there's certainly a lot of collaboration going on. And obviously the Scottish Government's agenda is hugely helpful in helping drive this forward as well. And everything is kind of linked into a lot of that. But in terms of the shared knowledge, I would say the place I've seen that being done best in Scotland right now is through the Cities Alliance.
Yeah, brilliant, thank you. Andrea, you've done a lot of gathering of information, and I'm sure a lot of it is applicable to councils as organisations as it is for private sector ones. what's the situation from your perspective in terms of gathering that best practice information and sharing it? Are there key places you would look to, or indeed you've got, that you can share?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo what other people have said, is that it is very disparative at the moment, and there's some really great stuff going on, but there isn't one central portal that you can go to that gives you the answers, especially because people are looking at different things, whether you're looking at your climate emergency or your net zero, or you're looking at going for a standard, or looking to meet the SDGs. There's so much stuff going on out there. Yes, we have a lot of information from the work we've done over the last 25 years, and that's collected through our Green Check platform. And I think there's, as Kevin said, you know, it doesn't matter who does it, but there needs to be one point of or one place where people can go to collect that, and maybe it's something iESE could look at potentially looking at hosting, or something that we could actually, or you could actually share those best practice, so all the information we've collected from today can be put onto a knowledge board, that we can have some way of sharing the stuff that Katie's told us about, you know, which has been great. So you know, in a straight answer, there isn't one place. There's lots of stuff out there. We've got a lot of information, especially on the sustainable tourism side of things. So if any of the destinations or local authorities are interested, particularly on that aspect, then please get in touch with me afterwards. But I think there's a need for some kind of portal around all of the information that could be shared.
Right, excellent, thank you. So we're just coming to the end of our allotted time. So I just wanted to give a chance for everyone to have a sort of one short final comment, if you like, about what you think the next steps are. So just a very, very quick one. Perhaps coming to yourself, Kevin, first. Just in terms of your plea, then, your one thing that you would ask councils to do.
Work together on this, and in particular work on our ask of government, because we've got a lot of resources and legislation, everything else that we need.
Great. Adam, your one plea.
I mean, I think it's keep it on the boil. I mean, this, you know, it's easy to be quite kind of wrapped up in it, and this is absolutely defined. This is one of the two central planks of policy agenda that Edinburgh has, and I would say that as a city as well as a council. But the danger of, you know, people just getting fed up of it, and business is still there, and climate change isn't really going anywhere. It's a bit like COVID. You can wish it away, but you can't really, you know, that's not really going to help anybody. So, you know, we need to keep things on the boil. We're going to have to ramp up the amount of actions that we take, not kind of fizzle out, and it's going to feel quite relentless. I think over the next decade in particular, amongst authorities that are trying to hit that 2030 target. So it's really important we keep it on the boil, really important we keep it front and centre, and we all speak from the same hymn sheet. When I'm speaking at kind of conferences on sustainability and thing, I always say, you know, speak out for what you want, because the people who don't want it will be speaking very, very loudly. So it requires a kind of full community approach to get what we want, and what we want as a, you know, more sustainable future.
Brilliant, thank you. Katie.
I guess just to echo what Adam's saying, but collaborate, work with universities, work with us to help solve some of these challenges, but also don't forget that there are multiple benefits that when you look at it more broadly, rather than just thinking about net zero or thinking about climate in one isolated issue, you know, think about the broader issues that are linked to climate around. I've put some notes in the chat, and there will be multiple benefits. You know, you might be able to solve other societal challenges at the same time as solving some of the climate challenges as well.
Thank you. Andrea.
I think what I would say is actually start. Don't be put off by all of the jargon and all the different things that are out there. If you haven't started, you know, get started. Keep it simple. Don't try and get weighed in and meet everything straight away. And take it in bite-sized pieces, so that you can start with something to get things motivated, and then see the results, and then move on from that. So I think the thing is that as everyone else has said, is don't be overwhelmed, but do it. That's the main thing. That's my big message. Just don't ignore it. It's there, and it's something we need to deal with. So start.
Brad, you've got a new technology, or is it new to the UK at least, bringing it into with potential use of councils? What would your one ask be of councils?
I think it's one word, really. I mean, it's about awareness, isn't it? I mean, I think Katie touched on it when she was talking about the students. You know, we all sit around at night at the moment, don't we? It's almost like the Dice Man, the Luke Reinhardt book, and we throw the dice and we think, what should we worry about tonight? Is it Black Lives Matter, or is it Brexit, or is it the pandemic, and it would be wonderful if we didn't have any choice, and if it was climate change. And you know, I think at a regional level, if there was the equivalent of a 30-second or 1 minute sort of news item every single night that was about the climate crisis, then we'd go a long way to solving the problem, really.
Thank you. Thanks. So I'm going to wrap up now. It's been a brilliant session, and thank you very much to all of our speakers. So said at the outset, all the speakers have been kind enough to say that we can share their contact details for any of you that want to follow up afterwards. This has been a great wide-ranging subject, and it just goes to show that in terms of sustainability, it's much broader. It is around sustainable communities in every sense, because unless those communities themselves are sustainable, we won't hit our sustainability goals. So one other reference that I would add into the pot, if you're interested in that, is I think it's an excellent initiative by Barking and Dagenham Council in London, called Everyone Every Day. So look that up, where they're looking at how you create sustainable food. And
yeah, absolutely, no problem. See you at 12.
So
cheers, bye.
That was my contribution. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for your contributions. Thank you for the questions in the chat. Apologies for not getting to all of them. I did try and weave as many of them into the conversation as I could. And good luck with your next steps. And please download the issue of Transform magazine, register your interest if you want to hear more, and we'll be coming back to you on this again, I'm sure. Thanks a lot. Bye.